Hey everybody, Green Films Official here. Today we're going to be discussing the Odyssey, but as you might have noticed, I am not alone. Do you want to introduce yourself, buddy?
Hello there, I'm Callum.
So, do you want to tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself, Callum?
Uh, well, um, I am of Greek descent. Um, I happen to follow along with the Greek pantheon as my own personal faith. Um, as well as I also have a interest in classic literature as well as a fairly decent knowledge about ancient history and mythology in general.
Nice, very cool. So, we were sort of both interested in the Odyssey movie for very different reasons. I, for one, am a big fan of Christopher Nolan. He's one of my favorite filmmakers working today. I think he does a lot of great high concept science fiction. And Callum was interested because, well,
Because the Odyssey is a story that I personally care a lot about. Um, I've always been interested in classic literature and in mythology, especially Greek mythology, as I am Greek, and I feel like it's a good note learning about the mythology surrounding things like the Odyssey and similar sort of things is a good way to connect with my own culture.
but you were a little skeptical about this film going
Mm.
in.
Yeah, because most films I've seen that deal with either ancient history or mythology of any kind tend to be a little bit meh.
Hmm.
You know, a great deal of terrible movies have been made about Greek mythology and specifically surrounding the Odyssey and the Iliad in general.
Hmm.
So I kind of went into it with low expectations.
Yeah, and I think me and Cal walked away from this film with very different feelings. Because I went into this with very high expectations because Christopher Nolan is a director who I've come to expect great things from, like extraordinary things from. And so I kind of went into the Odyssey expecting a masterpiece, and I walked away feeling a little disappointed. I think this is probably my least favorite Christopher Nolan film in quite some time, whereas you were pleasantly
I
surprised.
was. Yes, I don't really follow along too closely with Christopher Nolan. Um, he's definitely made some good movies, but I'm not one who really thinks about Christopher Nolan frequently.
Yeah.
Um, where I was going into it with the knowledge that there'd been so many bad movies made about Greek mythology, and was pleasantly surprised that this one was actually fairly good.
Yeah. I do think overall the Odyssey is a good movie, even a really good movie. I think technically it's marvelous. It's very immersive. It's beautifully shot. The effects are great.
We love
Um,
practical
yeah,
effects.
the fantastical elements are fantastic. Those are all my favorite parts of the film, like the Cyclops, the part where they all get turned into pigs, or like Scylla was fantastic. And Matt Damon gives a really good performance. His voice in this film is crazy. He almost sounds like Josh Brolin levels of rugged. But I think where it gets me is the structure of it. It's told non chronologically, which not inherently an issue, but I found it difficult to really latch on to this plot and its characters. This isn't the only version of the Odyssey I'm seeing, because or rather heard, because Cal got me to listen to Epic the musical.
Ah, yes. Epic. One of my personal favorites as a massive theatre nerd.
Yeah.
Um, I find there are a great many differences between, well, every version of this story, as it is a 3,000-year-old story. Um, a lot of the things that I think Epic did better than the Odyssey, the movie, obviously, um, was the characterization. Um, Things like the Cyclops in the Odyssey. It seemed like the characters were surprised to learn that this Cyclops could talk, and that kind of made me feel a bit meh, because in ancient Greece, Cyclops were widely known about and sort of thought to be intelligent creatures. It's actually in ancient Greek creation myths, um, the Cyclopses helped forge the weapons that the gods used to fight the Titans, and so them being surprised that the Cyclops was an intelligent creature kind of made me feel like, a little bit at odds with it. Another thing was the whole thing with them being surprised that the Cyclops was the son of Poseidon. Again, the gods were widely known for their baby making, and it was a well-known fact that Cyclops were the children of gods and nymphs. So I thought this is information that they should already be aware of, or at least not be surprised by. And you see a bit of that throughout the thing. I do kind of wish that the scene with the Cyclops had included things like the bit where Odysseus tells the Cyclops his name is Nobody, and the bit where he basically doxes himself to the Cyclops, because those are both relevant to the story.
Yeah. I think for me, with Epic the Musical, I think I cared more in Epic the Musical. I think there's a bit more of an emotional hook with Epic. I think you feel Odysseus's grief, you feel his love for Penelope. Like, it's a recurring motif throughout Epic the Musical of Penelope. And, like, I feel you don't really experience, like, Odysseus having to make, like, morally complex decisions in order to, like, save and or kill his crew. It feels like very, like, I mean, it is touched on, but it's very heavy-handed. Whereas I feel there's a lot more emotional connection in the Odyssey, in Epic the Musical, whereas the Odyssey left me kind of cold at times.
Yeah. It feels to me like he barely ever brings up Penelope until the very end, whereas in versions like Epic and other versions, he's pretty much always going on about how much he loves and misses his wife.
Yeah. I think there's literally a line in this film where Odysseus is like, "My wife is of no concern."
His wife was his only concern.
Yeah,
that was like half the problem.
Yeah.
Is because he was more concerned about his wife than, his crew making it home alive in some instances.
Yeah, and I wish there was more of that in the film, because I don't want to say the film's gratuitous violence, but I feel like at times the crew felt like they were only there to be bodies to be destroyed.
Yeah, like a lot of the crew, we either don't hear their names or we only hear them names referenced, or like Eurylochus is spoken to by name once. Other than that, you don't hear his name, so we're not feeling a personal connection to any of the characters that are a part of Odysseus's crew.
Yeah.
And I think we should have gotten a lot more than that. Like, again, with Epic, the characterization, we get to know some of these characters a bit, and we learn a bit about them and what motivates them and how they are. And we don't get that as much with this. It feels a lot less personal. And I think that could have been done a lot better.
Yeah. One of the things that disappointed me about the Odyssey is that I wish there was a bit more grandeur to it. I wish
Mm.
the Odyssey felt larger because I feel it was very stripped back. I think we spend way too much time back home at Ithaca. Not
Mm.
only because there's a bit of that in Epic the Musical, but it's spaced out nicely. Whereas I think in the Odyssey we spend extended periods back home, and even when Odysseus does get home, there's like nearly an hour of the movie still left.
Yeah. I think the thing is with the time we spend in Ithaca, it's important, and I don't think any of that should have been cut out, but we should have gotten a lot more time on the actual journey because that's what the story is about. I feel as though if they had made this movie maybe half an hour, even an hour longer, it would have been a lot better and just spent more time
Yeah.
on the story.
Yeah, because this movie's not even 3 hours.
Mm.
It's just shy of 3 hours, like 170 minutes, which is longer than most movies. But we have 3.5 hour movies exist, 4.5 hour long movies exist. I'm not saying the Odyssey needed to be quite that long. But, I definitely think a longer runtime would have helped. More time actually experiencing the titular Odyssey.
I feel like with this, with the way they told this story, it kind of left a lot out of the actual journey. Like we don't hear anything, we don't have anything about Aeolus's bag of winds. We barely interact with Scylla. We don't get him interacting with Charybdis at all. And Hermes isn't even in it.
Yeah, which is you were very upset about.
I was
the lack
very
of
upset
Hermes.
about the lack of Hermes. Like, Apollo's mentioned more than Hermes, and Hermes was actually important to the Odyssey because, as well as being the god of messengers, he is the god of travelers, and this journey, it's a journey, he's traveling. It's the whole... It's just feels like they didn't really consider that, and I don't know if it was a time issue or whether it's just not something that crossed Christopher Nolan's mind, but I was a little sad.
Yeah. Something I think was done very interestingly in this movie was Athena, because you see her sporadically throughout the film, looking at Odysseus, talking to him, and then eventually, by the end of the film, it's revealed that Athena has been taking the form of some lady that Odysseus had killed during, the taking of Troy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And oh, sorry. Do you want to?
I think this is interesting because throughout history, the gods taking various forms has been a fairly common theme in Greek mythology, whether it be the form of animals, the form of people, the form of various different types of people. It's fascinating to see the way they do that in the Odyssey with Athena specifically, because it feels as though she's somewhat representative of his guilt over his basically war crimes, and seeing the destruction of not just Troy but monuments to Athena, a god that Odysseus actually worships.
And there's that very clever shot where excuse me, where like they're about to cut the lady's head off, and then it cuts to the statue of Athena's head being chopped off.
Yeah.
I just really thought the image of Athena taking the form of this lady, I thought that was a very interesting idea of showing his guilt following him around everywhere.
Yeah,
which you sort of just said.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, but I think as well as the guilt of war crimes, there's somewhat some religious guilt involved there too, because like I said, Odysseus worships Athena. She's somewhat of his patron goddess. So having him feel like maybe he might have been behaving in a manner that was sacrilegious, and having that religious guilt as well as the guilt of having committed war crimes and having done serious harm to actual people. I think it's a fascinating representation of that.
Yeah. Speaking of the gods, though, while I think Athena was great, I was honestly pretty let down by the gods in this movie on the whole. I felt they were very lackluster and sort of anticlimactic. I think I heard a lot before the movie that that they like the gods like they wouldn't literally be there, but they would sort of be shown through the elements. And I guess there's a bit of that, like, they mentioned Zeus might be angry and then lightning strikes, but I wanted like really crazy stuff like this. And I think just beyond how little of the actual Odyssey there is, I think part of this part like that sort of played a part in the film not feeling as grand as I would have liked. Doesn't feel quite like the epic I thought it would be.
I think I agree. Yes, I already mentioned my unhappiness at the lack of Hermes, as well as I think a lot of what we do see is things like we hear them talking about Zeus being angry, and then we see the lightning storm. But I think, as far as that goes, that's pretty much the biggest thing that the gods do in that movie, because you see them briefly mention that Poseidon will be angry with them for blinding their son, but then we don't really see any of that.
Yeah, the sea does not feel that arduous.
Yeah, it's like there's a little bit of rain and a little bit of like waves, and but it doesn't really feel like a proper storm that is blocking the way to Ithaca. In the Odyssey, the fact that they couldn't get home was a significant thing. Like the storms blocked the way home, hence them having to capture the storm in Aeolus's bag of winds, which again wasn't in this movie. We don't even hear of Aeolus, and I think the whole fact that they don't even make it close to Ithaca at the beginning kind of bothered me, because in the Odyssey it's told that they're so close to the shore that they can literally smell bread being baked and hear children singing before the bag of wind is opened, releasing the storm, which is what kills most of Odysseus's crew. And I feel like us not getting that is one of the things that kind of bothers me about this film, as well as the fact that we hear nothing of Odysseus's mother, because one thing I felt was interesting about the Odyssey is that she witnessed the storm swallow the ships, and she believed that Odysseus had been killed, and she died of a broken heart, essentially. And I feel like us not getting any of that was really disappointing, especially for the underworld scene.
Yeah.
We missed out on quite a few things, I think, with that.
Yeah, the underworld scene, I was really looking forward to seeing that in this movie, and I felt that was really underwhelming.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I was definitely hoping for a scene with Odysseus' mother, and we didn't get that. I was also hoping for that one guy who got drunk and fell off of Circe's roof to be included. I was like my favorite guy. 10 out of 10 stupid deaths. I also wanted to talk a bit about Tiresias, because I feel like we don't really get very much from him in this movie, and I would like more. We don't really get to learn anything about him as a character. He doesn't really say much or do much. Um, in, in the Odyssey, he was a lot more helpful, and he, whilst in this he did provide prophecy and guidance to Odysseus, we didn't really get that much. Like, I feel like almost Circe was more helpful than Tiresias, which, whilst Circe was a fairly decent portrayal, I think, I felt like we almost weren't getting as much. We were almost getting more from her than we were from Tiresias. And yeah, I would have liked a bit more.
Do you think this film sort of relies a bit on already having a bit of knowledge on the Odyssey? Do you think this film like works that well as a standalone? Like if you had no idea about the Odyssey and this is your only version of the Odyssey?
I feel like overall it's not bad. I think if this was the only version of the Odyssey you were exposed to, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but as someone who does have prior knowledge about the Odyssey, I feel like having that prior knowledge did influence my enjoyment a great deal.
Yeah.
If you're watching this just purely for the enjoyment factor and not to learn about the Odyssey, then it's a fairly decent film.
Excuse me. Apologies.
But if this is your only influence when it comes to learning about it, then I feel like you need a bit more information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, we talked a little bit about this after the movie, only for a tiny bit though, but there is a small controversy, I guess, surrounding this film that, it doesn't have any actual Greek people in it.
Yes.
How do you feel about that as a Greek person?
As far as the casting goes, I think it could have been a lot worse. One thing I've noticed is there's poor casting in just about every American movie involving mythology. But no one ever seems to complain when it's, pasty white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed people being casted as Mediterranean. They only seem to care when it's minorities.
Yeah, like the whole thing of like, Helen of Troy is black.
They had they were bordered by Egypt and the Middle East and had trade routes throughout both Africa and Europe, and yet they expect everyone to look Scandinavian? Like, Ethiopia was a common trade partner of that particular part of Greece. It's not that out there to think that, oh my god, there might be black people in a part of the world where black people are supposed to be.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, like, do they think the black people stop at the border? Like, there's white people on this side and black people on this side, and no one can cross over?
Like, yeah. Silly.
It's ridiculous.
Yep.
Overall, I don't think the casting was that bad. Like, Zendaya as Athena, I think she makes for a pretty good Athena. She can pass for Mediterranean. Honestly, I think Tom Holland could arguably also pass for Mediterranean. His hair, for one thing, having naturally curly hair is one thing I thought was interesting, because a lot of his roles, he straightens his hair. And for this, he let his naturally curly hair be there.
Yeah.
I think one thing I do feel a little irritated about when it does come to the casting is the accents. Especially with Robert Pattinson. I noticed it more, his very strong American accent coming through.
Which, I mean, isn't he, like, British in real life, I'm pretty sure?
I have no idea, but he sounded American.
Yeah, he was trying to do, like, an American... I'm pretty sure he's British in real life, but, like, I'm sure he, like, acts with American accent, and it sort of comes out a bit here.
Yeah.
Mm.
I feel like they could have definitely at least tried to sound a bit more Mediterranean.
Yeah, I think there's one part where they're like, we're Greeks from Ithaca.
Yeah, that's literally what I'm talking about. I feel like
Mm.
that bothers me a lot more than things like skin tone because, again, if it was a
Excuse
major
me.
trade route,
Mm.
you'd, even if a particular skin tone is unrealistic for that region, it's a major trade route. They could have just come through via trade.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that out there to think major trade routes have people of all walks of life.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it does feel a bit
Yeah.
Americanized, a bit, yeah.
Mm.
Which yeah isn't necessarily a problem for Christopher Nolan's other films, because those films take place in America.
Mm.
I think it was a bit of a thing with Dunkirk though, that Dunkirk was very whitewashed
Mm.
because like all people of all walks of life fought in the Battle of Dunkirk, but it's largely white people in Dunkirk.
Mm. Yeah. I feel like when it comes to things like that, there's definitely some improvements that could be made as far as diversity goes.
Yeah.
But then people will complain. People will complain even when it is what they want. With one of the Night at the Museum movies, Rami Malek, an Egyptian actor, was being complained about having played an Egyptian pharaoh because he was considered white.
Yeah.
It's just a bit silly.
Yep.
I think
Very.
people care way too much about things like that.
Very. I think the Calypso stuff in this movie is a real disappointment for me because, again, like I mentioned previously, it's sort of fractured and it's like, it's sort of Odysseus is telling the story of the Odyssey to Calypso, but I feel like we don't get any time grounded on the island with Calypso. And I think for that reason, I found it hard to be like I found it hard to give a shit about the Calypso stuff in this movie because
Yeah.
it felt like almost tossed to the side because it felt more like narrative framework than like an actual arc of the story in itself when it very much felt that way in Epic the musical.
Yeah. I think another thing that I found a bit meh with almost both Epic and this is the portrayal of Calypso. I do love the way she's portrayed in Epic. I mean, her voice actress is fantastic. She's being played well, and the songs are top notch. But one of the things that I feel as though Calypso's story is one of those things that varies wildly between versions of the Odyssey. Some versions have her basically being more or less a rapist, whereas other versions will have her have Odysseus and Calypso as lovers, which is interesting, and other versions have her falling in love with Odysseus and him basically just ignoring her in favor of building his raft and going home to his wife.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that is one thing that is difficult to do with any adaptation of the Odyssey, because which version are you going to portray with this?
Yeah, I think this movie sort of leans a bit more into like, Calypso being a rapist because like Odysseus doesn't even know how long he's been on the island, and Calypso is like hiding things from him. But I think it's hard to feel the gut punch of that betrayal or that violation. Sorry, not betrayal. Or is it? It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because anyway, point aside. Because again, it's all fractured. It's not its own arc.
We're not really seeing any of it, and it's more or less her being like, okay, I'll stop drugging you now. Get on your boat. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And that's about all we actually see of her.
Yeah. Overall, I do think The Odyssey is solid. I think it's a very well-made film, but I was just sort of surprised. Everyone said Nolan's films are often leave them feeling cold, and this one's a bit more emotional. And there is a bit of that, like with Odysseus confessing his guilt to Penelope. But funnily enough, I feel like the Odyssey left me a bit cold in comparison to some of Nolan's other films, and it doesn't go as grand as I hoped it would. I feel like Nolan almost always shows me things I haven't seen before, like Tenet. That movie is crazy. That movie is about like time going forwards and backwards at like the same time, and the in crazy action sequences. And I mean, I don't know. I think with the Odyssey, it's not an original story. It's an ages old story. So I sort of wonder how much Nolan is really capable of doing with this story. But even then, I feel like he could have gone bigger. Yeah, I do. But overall, very well done. It's just I wasn't as blown away by it as a lot of other people were, and it's probably one of my least favorite Nolans. It's still, again, overall a really good movie, but like it's just not, to me. It's just not up to the regular Nolan standard. I was a little bit let down by it.
Yeah. I feel as though, um, well, as someone who does know a fair bit about the Odyssey and doesn't know very much about Christopher Nolan, I felt as though it was done fairly well in comparison to a lot of other movies that have been made about Greek myths and whatnot. Um, Obviously, I feel like we could have gotten more from the characters, and I feel as though, especially with giving the monsters some vague semblance of intelligence,
Mm,
I feel like we could have done more there. Overall, though, I feel like I'm pleasantly surprised by this.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I think this is something that I feel as though certain things were done very well, and things like the time we spend in Ithaca were done really well.
yeah.
The way things like Telemachus and his relationship with Penelope were done really well, as opposed to something like Odysseus's relationship with his crew were fairly lackluster. But overall, I think this was probably one of the better Greek mythology interpretations out there. Obviously, I feel as though Epic the Musical tops that, just for having included more.
Mm,
And I feel as though if this had included more of what I wanted to see, then I would have enjoyed it a lot more.
yeah, and I mean, yeah, and it's sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I was gonna say just I know it's music and not like an actual movie, Epic the Musical, but I'm pretty sure Epic the Musical all up is shorter than this movie, and yet it includes more. But again, maybe that's unfair because it's music and song, which generally tell stories quicker than movies do.
Yeah, and I feel like one thing is with Epic the Musical, we're being told a lot more, as opposed to, I feel as though with this movie, Christopher Nolan's trying to show us without necessarily telling us.
Yeah.
And I feel like that doesn't work as well.
Mm.
Like, I do generally prefer show, not tell in movies, but I feel like we could have definitely been told more.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of what we do see is masterfully done,
Yes.
I think it doesn't convey as much information. I feel like we should have gotten a lot more dialogue than what we did. Like, we have next to no dialogue with the crew. We have very little dialogue with...
Yeah, there's no... Sorry, go on.
we have almost no dialogue with any of the monsters of any sort. And very little dialogue with any of the people that Odysseus interacts with on his journey home. And I think we probably should have gotten a lot more of that. Although I will just say the practical effects,
Oh,
top notch.
they're so good.
So
They're
very good.
That's and that's something Christopher Nolan's always been good for.
Love practical effects.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah.
But
This movie, yeah. And the set design as well is
Set
fantastic.
design,
And I'm pretty sure
fantastic.
I'm gonna have to double check this after this video is done, but I'm pretty sure some of this was shot on location as well.
Yeah, I believe that Christopher Nolan did a lot of shooting in Greece.
Yeah, it definitely looks that way. So yeah, all of that is top notch, and I think that's part of why this movie is so immersive. It almost feels like a documentary version of the Odyssey at times.
Yeah, but yeah. Overall, I think it was a pretty good adaptation, despite my complaints.
I'm very critical of it again purely because I went in expecting it to be better. I think it's a film that I would probably get a bit more out of. I might be able to appreciate it more on a rewatch now that I know what to expect and I don't have these grand expectations that I had before the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas I went into it with very low expectations and was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, you were here and I was up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Your support really helps out. And I'm also on a number of different platforms. I do written reviews over on Letterboxd, Backlogged, Serialized, and Goodreads. And I do photography and stuff over on my Instagram. So check out all of those if that sounds interesting to you. And Callum, thank you for being here, dude.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it was great. Alrighty. Well, I hope to see you in the next one, everybody. Bye!